Mr. Lloyd Smith, known to us all as the governor, Mr. Clayton Morgan, chairman of the Region 6 Outreach Commission.
That's right.
Comrade Mark Golding,
Respect.
president of the People's National Party, and I'm so delighted to see Mrs. Golding with him. Comrade Beverly Manley, candidates, ladies and gentlemen, comrades, room full, all full, we're going to get a spoonful.
A belly full.
Let me thank the governor, first of all, for being so kind. I get very upset when I am being introduced and they try to tell portions of my life story. You are going to hear some portions of my life story from me tonight.
Good.
I want to commend Mr. Clayton Morgan and the committee for organizing this event. I didn't tell him it was not a political event. It is, but it is not a political rally.
Right.
And the difference is it's sponsored by the People's National Party. I'm very proud and pleased to be here in that regard. But we have always understood that any party, and particularly the People's National Party, as I will establish later, has an obligation to reach beyond the confines of its membership and to be in touch with persons in various sectors and in various groupings who may have a different political outlook than the one we share in common.
Correct.
This is a meeting where my remarks are going to be addressed with you in mind. So it's not one to lick shots.
No.
And I want everybody to be comfortable. I can't help remembering that it was on the 5th of February 1972 that I had the pleasure of standing beside Michael Manley as we launched the most memorable, historic, and delightful political campaign which resulted in our victory in 1972. I don't know if history is going to repeat itself this time round, but I've been called from the pavilion and I'm pleased to come as an opening batsman to the series which is going to be held in Region 6. And I see the trap being set for me already. Because the other two parishes, I come by descent, I'm a son of Hanover, I represented Westmoreland, but I am a child of St. James. I think as we launch on our discourse, as Jamaicans, we need to be reminded affiliation to a party is a good thing, but our allegiance is to Jamaica, the nation, out of many, one people. It is not by accident that I'm stepping out in Montego Bay. And it's difficult for me to make this presentation, and I hope you will indulge me if I am somewhat nostalgic. I first came to St. James at the age of 7. My mother was teaching at Salters Hill School. She was insistent no way was her son going to the school at which she taught. Either they were going to spoil me or they were going to victimize me. So I was sent to my aunt, who was then the postmistress at Somerton. Even in my 89th year, my trip from Montego Bay to Somerton is indelibly etched in my mind. I boarded the bus, little lad, a total stranger, no relatives. I was put beside the driver. The driver was the son of the bus owner. And I don't know, even you people in Kingston might have known him when he ran one of the big stores on Spanish Town Road, Carlton, Beckford. That's how he got the name Mobe. Oh. He was a driver. And my mother said to him, "Take care of my son until you deliver him to his aunt." The bus trip from the time we entered, coming along Strand Street, past Parade, onto Barnett Street, that part of the journey took 2 hours. Because we had to stop at every store and pick up the people who had come from the country to make purchases there. There was a Texaco gas station at the end of Barnett Street. And they filled the tank with gas. And we drove past Fairfield, where Lord Beaverbrook was building his house, Cromarty, True Tucker, Irwin, Johns Hall. Johns Hall was the first stop. All the men went into the bar, came back out, played a game of dominoes, and they brought a bottle of cola champagne for the little boy and gave it to me. The journey from Johns Hall to Somerton, through Lottery, Amity Hall, Virgin's Valley, took 3 hours. What sticks in my mind is a gathering of people. They were singing Jamaican songs that I had never heard. Sammy Dead, Ron Mongoose. They were into Negro spirituals. They were into hymns. They were one happy, united people. And when you hear me even today talking about a sense of civility, a sense of respect, a sense of oneness, that's what I am talking about. I ended up handed over to my aunt. I knew nobody else in Somerton. The entire village of Somerton adopted me. And I became a child of Somerton. And what I'm talking about is the care, the love, the concern, the sharing, the encouragement, and even, if necessary, the reprimand. Those were the days when women made their living breaking rockstone and singing Go Down Emmanuel Road. It is not a practice that could be continued. And it is one of the things that we brought to an end when we took government in 1972. But although it was kerosene lamp in the house and Peony Wally lighting the road, you could walk any time of day or night. And those were the days when you could sleep with your doors and windows open. No fear of gunmen nor gangsters. When I spend time with my grandchildren and I'm telling them about the days of telegram, when the telegrams reach very often about somebody who is dead in St. Thomas. By the time the telegram reached, the person is already buried. And in the most delicate and politeful ways, the children said to me, "Stop tell lie, Grandpa." But in those days, the post office was the center of the village. We knew everything that was going on. And even after time, when I used to take the telegrams for my aunt, you would get the instructions when to cut bananas, and bring them down, or how to get the cane orders that were taken to ban it. I took great pleasure in walking the whole community with the people who were paid to deliver telegrams. That's how I got to know the people, and they got to know me. Of course, those were the early days of universal adult suffrage.
Okay.
And some of you have heard me tell the story of the 1944 election and my campaign when Comrade Violet Stewart of blessed memory was my campaign manager. Unfortunately, the virus was injected in my system before I knew it. Don't fear, I can't take you through my life like this. But I simply want to say that arising from then, we developed a political system where two parties have been predominant. And of course, those who will not venture for service are prepared to spend all their time abusing and denigrating those who do.
True.
Yes, our political system has not produced all that we would have desired, but thank God we have a vibrant, plural democracy.
Yeah.
We have fundamental rights and freedoms which have been preserved and which the people, the electorate, will never allow to be eroded. We have reached that point where after 62 years of independence, the time has come when there needs to be certainly changes in our constitutional arrangements. I want to remind everybody who seems to have forgotten that we spent a lot of time during my administration trying to fashion changes, some obvious and immediate changes. That was done in a consultative spirit.
Yeah.
We reached a point where we were agreed on all the essential elements, certainly including leaving the monarchy and for those who choose not to remember, on the question of the final court of appeal, there was no question. The report itself said, when we leave the monarch's crown, we also leave the monarch's court. And without going into the long background, I just want you all to be mindful of the fact that Bustamante and Manley, who were both committed to the monarchy, accepted that our final court would not be the Privy Council. And that is why the provision about the Privy Council was put in by both of them as a simple amendment. So that when, after the other islands had achieved their independence and we had agreed on a judicial system to establish a federal court, then 110 would have been taken out simply, and the new federal court, which is the CCJ, would have been inserted. Some people are trying to make political mischief by suggesting that the reason for the position taken by the opposition party has something to do with who was Marx Golding's father.
Oh, gosh.
It is imbecilic.
Good word.
And I'm being charitable when I say that. I would go further. I'd go further. That position has nothing to do with Mark Golding.
Correct.
There is no way the People's National Party, whoever is the leader, ever agree to a situation where we leave the monarch's court and we don't have sufficient confidence in ourselves to administer justice which is accessible to the people we represent. Of course, there are some other issues which I am not going to delve into, but there is at least one abhorrent proposal in the present bill.
Yeah.
I don't speak for the party. Mark does. I speak for myself.
Yeah.
No. If they ever try to pass an amendment that says we have a ceremonial plus president that is appointed by 2/3 of both houses on the nomination of the Prime Minister after consultation with the leader of the opposition. And if he doesn't go through on the first round, then that person can be appointed by simple majority on the nomination of the Prime Minister.
Crazy.
I am going to be the first one out on the road, because that cannot spin. You don't want a ceremonial head of state,
correct,
which is a surrogate or a puppet
of the Prime Minister.
of the Prime Minister. I want to touch on another area which has to do with our electoral process. And I have to put it in context. When in 1979, Jamaica appeared to be on the brink of a civil war, fueled by the external intervention of the Central Intelligence Agency.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I repeat, what the conflict that was taking place at that time was fueled substantially because of the intervention of the CIA. And we now have conclusive evidence.
That's right.
And we know who were the players, including who was the trigger man on the other side. But today is not the day for that, to go into that.
Yes.
But it is against that background that we set up what was then the Electoral Advisory Commission, which is now the Electoral Commission. There has been one cardinal rule, which is to accept the recommendations of the Electoral Advisory Commission.
Correct.
And that is why we have insisted that within that commission, there must be political representation.
Yeah.
So that the differences that arise on partisan sides are taken into account in the recommendation that is forthcoming.
That's right.
For the first time in our history, the government of today has introduced an amendment affecting the powers and the operations of the Electoral Commission, which do not reflect a consensus.
Correct. First time.
And I regard it as lightning, which must serve as a warning. I had a very simple rule of thumb when I was Prime Minister. Anytime you're going to put forward a law, think of how you would react to that law if you were in opposition rather than in government. And if you know it will be unacceptable to you in opposition, do not pursue it. And I've been misunderstood considerably, even by my own party, by the way in which I have approached certain things. But the principal aim and motivation was to do what we can to unite Jamaica.
Yes.
Which is what Norman Manley said when he founded this party. I am talking about the amendment that puts into the hands of the EAC the powers of the political ombudsman. I view that unilateral imposition with great alarm. The EAC is not equipped to discharge those functions. 10 people or 9 people can't be an ombudsman. And what is more, there is conflict inherent because within the EAC or the Electoral Commission, you have people who are there because of their partisan political position. And you want an ombudsman who is not involved,
Yeah.
who is immune from any kind of partisan consideration. I'm not going to talk about the question of the acts of corruption. I'm not going to delve into the cases and the allegations, some of which are manifest, which are in the public domain, and some of them, of course, even before our courts. I'd simply say this. When I became Prime Minister, although the law did not require it then, I made my integrity returns public. I remember getting a letter from Michael Manley, who had then retired, who said, master stroke. My returns when I retired were also available for public scrutiny. So everybody can know what I went in with and what I came out with. No spelling or no guessing from whence it came. All I would say here, he that hath ears to hear, let them hear. I must, however, say that the present attacks being launched against a commission that was set up to promote integrity, those attacks are deplorable and dangerous.
You're here.
And I have to say, it is outrageous when the Minister of Justice can publicly be advising
Colleagues.
that their spouses' declarations need not be returned. It would make a mockery of the law. Because instead of bribes or undue enrichment going into the representative's account, you would simply divert it to spouses, to children, to siblings, or to parents. The Integrity Commission must be able to follow the trail wherever it may lead.
That's it.
The members must have the protection of secure tenure, the authority and the resources to pursue any semblance of corruption, regardless of where their findings may lead. I think as we're coming towards the end of February, and 2 appointments will arise for consideration, we need to be reminded that those appointments are made by the Governor General after consultation with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition.
It's his decision.
It is that ability or capacity to be impartial which has caused several of us to move from being resolute for an executive president to being prepared to accept for a time a ceremonial plus, so that we are watching and we are waiting and we are listening. And we hope that there's not going to be any hijacking of those who are discharging their duties, regardless of where their findings have led.
Yeah.
Now, I come to a move from national, and I'm talking to St. James. Time is not going to allow me to do everything. But I want to start by reflecting on a field which is the lifeblood of Montego Bay and St. James. And I want to share with you my observations on tourism. St. James is no longer the parish of slave plantations against which the Right Excellent Sam Sharp led the rebellion. But even when slavery was abolished, the plantation system was still thriving for a long while in St. James. When I came to St. James as a child, the entire city, from Barnet right around, coming out to Greenwood, the ownership of the lands was in the hands of the plantocracy. Today, Montego Bay no longer remains that town surrounded by hectares of land where the people own nothing. We smashed that wall when we acquired the Lilliput Rose Hall lands. And you remember how I was assailed and condemned. Go look at the corridor as you enter Montego Bay and think if any of that would have been possible but for the work done by Michael Manley and PJ Patterson in settling that matter. Montego Bay is not only a city which was legislated for by the PNP, but it is also the tourism capital of Jamaica. Indeed, the tourism capital of the English-speaking Caribbean. The Donald Sangster Airport, again which I privatized despite hostile political fire, is now rated as numero uno in the Caribbean. Nobody can tell me how crucial tourism is to the lifeblood of Western Jamaica. I am speaking about it because it has a centrifugal force for the entire country. For in the 70s, I stood on the burning deck when all the existing moguls of the industry had fled. That is when, as Minister of Tourism, I held the hand of Glenn Bloomfield at every stage in the launch of Juta, so that the taxi drivers would have a space of their own. That is why we set out in 1989 to expand and improve the infrastructure across the entire island with a concentration on the west, beginning with phase 1 of the North Coast Highway from Negril to Montego Bay, and soon thereafter from Montego Bay to Ocho Rios. That is why we put in place the Great River and Queen of Spain Valley water supplies, amongst others. That's why we modernized the airport and the Montego Bay Seaport. It is that kind of infrastructure investment which triggered the boom in rooms with the arrival of Spanish investors to more than double the space provided by the Sandals and Super Club chains. But we also left space for local entrepreneurs. And I was so happy when I could meet Mr. Dennis Morgan at the front of what was the Chatham Hotel, because, Governor, you and I know that that was a place where you had to wear tuxedo to dinner. We opened new attractions to improve our product mix. I note with personal satisfaction the efforts of Minister Bartlett to explore new markets and increase our visitor range. And I give him due credit. But I say, if you are claiming to surround tourism with a green jacket, it's not going to work. My experience and my knowledge of the industry suggest some warning lights. And I want to share a few thoughts with you, some of which have been mentioned by Senator Allen previously. Our visitors want the Jamaican experience. They want to enjoy the #1 brand, which is Jamaica. Tourism must never again become an enclave industry. It is part of our national space and our natural endowment. Our people must have a sense of ownership, one to which they belong. The workers are the essential asset. That's what our returning residents all say. With or without union representation, each worker must be entitled to full reward in return for due performance. Particularly with the absence of union representation and some joint industrial council, we will have to consider whether there should be a labor code for the industry which sets the regulatory framework in which the industry operates. We must ensure there are Jamaicans in senior positions, and those at the middle must get equal compensation and all the extras that the expatriate state staff are getting. There must be stronger and lasting linkages with the vital sectors led by agriculture.
Yeah.
And I was just saying to the party leader before I came in, there's a very interesting article in yesterday's newspaper setting out all the incentives that tourism get. If we want agriculture
To step up.
to be a center for development, which is essential for food security, which is essential for rural development, then we must be prepared to give agriculture the same set of incentives as we do for tourism.
Yeah.
And nobody must quote me, because I am not saying that we must impose any tax. I am saying, however, that we may have to look somewhere at a dedicated fund.
Right.
That's what we did for the Tourism Enhancement Fund.
Yes.
Right? And they have now taken that Tourism Enhancement Fund into the Consolidated Fund.
Yeah.
And they use it for almost everything except enhancing the tourism areas and the people that benefit from tourism. The tourism industry has to have linkages, horticulture, artistic works, paintings, sculptures, pottery, with industry. We can't be importing entertainers when Jamaica has the best entertainers in the world. We have to link sports with tourism. That is why the Trelawney
Multi-purpose.
Oval was placed where it was. And we have to reserve an element for community involvement, for private individual engagement, for bread and breakfast, for the Jamaican cuisine. We have to define areas that are restricted to local Jamaican enterprise. For example, ground transportation. That's the only way we can secure the maximum take from every dollar spent, because tourism must matter to all Jamaicans. As we gather, the world is a different world from the one which existed in 1938 when our party was founded. But I can't avoid, at an outreach meeting, reminding you that at its foundation, Norman Manley was adamant that our party's name should include peoples, because it was intended to serve the masses of the country. He also said that labor was a significant component, but the party should be called national because it had to be about the development of Jamaica as a whole rather than any single component. The world is also vastly different from that which existed in 1972. And I see some people trying in celebrating Michael Manley's
100th century
revolutionary provisions in the 1972 period, attempting to suggest that those were not followed after 1989. The world was different.
Very much so.
We are now faced with the devastating effects of global warming and climate change, a reality. Talking about hurricanes. The 1951 hurricane, Governor, I was up at Springfield, and the morning when I woke up, you could see through all the banana fields right down into the harbor of Montego Bay. Those hurricanes now are more frequent, they are more devastating. And we have a situation where one place is flooding while another place is drought. Global warming and climate change are realities with which we have to deal. Time is not going to allow me to delve into the international order, our fight then for the new international economic order, which we continued during the 1990s, and which was reflected, as I shall mention, in practical collaboration like Petro-Carib with South-South cooperation, and we got more money out of Petro-Carib, which was launched right here in Montego Bay, than what we got from the IMF and World Bank combined.
And on better terms.
We have to deal with the spread of military conflicts and global pandemics, all of which trigger crises of migration and poverty. And then since January 20th, we have to deal with the challenges and uncertainties which flow from a country that is seeking to maintain a single hegemony, and with a president who believes that America owns the world. What he does in the United States is one thing. What happens in the rest of the world and how it affects us is another thing, and makes it imperative that we in the Caribbean, with the rest of the developing world, in Africa, must come together as one. In Jamaica, we are confronted with crimes at levels and of ferocity which are unprecedented. We are encouraged somewhat that there's a drop this year when compared with last year. But they are intolerably and unacceptably too high. Nobody in Jamaica can feel safe in the present situation. As to the roads, not even before the days of asphalt, when it was Rockstone Road, have I seen the roads in Jamaica in such a state of dilapidation and disrepair.
Unbelievable.
Despite the National Health Service, which was created during my regime, and without which we could not have survived the last pandemic. Despite that, our health system is tottering on the brink of abject failure. My charitable side is not going to cause me to talk about the Cornwall Hospital, starting with 1.2 billion and it is now 21.5 billion and mounting, and the hospital is still incomplete.
Yeah.
Nowhere else in the world but Jamaica could you have a project like that and not even one head rule.
It's crazy. Not one.
And despite all the boast about prosperity, and despite the economic indices, there are too many families which simply cannot make ends meet.
Yeah.
There's a recent report that shows hunger and malnutrition in Jamaica are at an alarming levels.
Yeah.
No wonder the birth rate is also falling.
Can't make love on a hungry belly.
But worst of all, and this I say because the polls say it, there's a breakdown of trust and confidence in the country. We have to change course. We are moving in the wrong direction. The moral order is under siege and the social order in decay. We have to come to the rescue of Jamaica, land we love. Time to restore the precepts of transparency and accountability.
Yeah.
It is said that all politics is local. It is St. James where I started, and it is to St. James I return in closing this presentation. And again I go back to something which Norman Manley said in 1938 to preface my conclusion remarks. He said, we need to develop our own capacities, our own gifts for leadership, until out of our own people, we can find our own solutions. And that is why the PNP is always the party that consults with the people. It doesn't attempt to rule the people. Sometime last year, a gentleman whose political persuasion is well known, but whose commitment to community development is unquestionable, sent me a little document, Montego Bay's Path to Transformation, Revitalizing the Urban Core for a Sustainable Future. And that gentleman was Mr. O. Dave Allen. I want to use it, if I may, to suggest to this forum that the 5 bright, enthusiastic candidates that you have, capable, all-round experience, be invited to bring together all the elements in Montego Bay to work on a development plan for the parish of St. James. I hope when they reach a certain stage, party leader, that you will instruct your shadow cabinet ministers, the relevant ones, to come and sit with them.
Sure.
So that there is a plan for St. James, which has the inputs from those skilled in urban and rural planning, our teachers in education, people in health, engineering, the church, business, both big and small, farmers, the artisans, entertainers, transport, to finalize a comprehensive plan of action for St. James. So that when you enter Jamaica House, after the appropriate signal, you can put in place the wheels to get going
And plan.
to restore St. James to its pristine glory and achieve its full potential. At the center of it has to be education and training. And I can't help but remind you that during my time, I built 17 new secondary schools in Western Jamaica. You know, I get plenty barbs, I get plenty licks.
Yeah, man.
I take them in silence because whenever I have asked for the verdict of the people, they have given me the sign of approval.
Straight up.
Education and training is necessary to increase productivity and boost income levels. We saw what happened with the 807s. We are faced with the same thing with the BPOs. We want to lift the training to a higher level so that the income that the people who work in it is increased considerably. I mentioned Petro-Carib a while ago. One of the things that Fidel, Hugo Chavez, and myself talked about when we met at Rose Hall was the building of a university on the lands at Montpelier. We wanted it to be a training center that brought together the Hispanic countries and the English-speaking countries. Perhaps we have to look at a university now in Western Jamaica of a different kind. You are into the service industry.
Yeah.
So it has to be training, nursing, the creative arts, to provide training which, again, another son of Western Jamaica coined Rex Nettleford as the creative imagination. And you have to encompass as well the field of artificial intelligence.
Right.
And so long as I'm alive during your term, I'm going to be supporting the MPs from Western Jamaica because I am a Region 6 man. Time comes for us to have a university of our own down here. Let me close. It is my hope that out of this meeting will come the energy, the determination, the will the resolve for the party and its exciting team from St. James to continue the fight for building an island where every citizen, regardless of race, gender, class, or creed, will feel valued, nurtured, and respected. I hope all of you in this room, no matter your political affiliation, will agree that for the betterment of St. James, you have to work together with each and every one and the sectors and political perspectives you represent in making the noble parish of St. James a priceless jewel in this paradise which our people inhabit, and to bring real, true, lasting prosperity for generations to come.